Why would you learn the power slide? There are other ways to brake as well. I didn't always stick to the idea of learning the power slide because it's not very easy for a beginner to learn it. And many times I questioned, well, I'm not sure if I will ever learn this. Isn't there another braking method that might be easier to learn and might be just as effective, or at least enough for me to be able to skate outside, because I really want to skate on the street. Hi fellow inline pilots, welcome to the channel and welcome to my new Beginner to Power Slide series. In this series I will go through the steps that I went through as a beginner, starting a bit more than a year ago in the spring of 2022, to now be able to do the power slide, but there's a lot of things that happened in between to get there, and I wanted to make a video about like how I learned the power slide, but I figured it was actually too much to cover in one video, because it's kind of the whole process from beginning learning to skate actually, and all the things that you need to learn before you actually can do the power slide, which is a braking method. And so I decided to break it up in multiple parts, and because I like to go in depth and not skip important details, but I don't want to make a huge video, and even one of the aspects is already quite a long time to talk about. So in this first episode we'll first begin with discussing the different braking methods for inline skating, because of course why would you learn the power slide? There are other ways to brake as well. So it was also not very, I didn't always stick to the idea of learning the power slide because it's not very easy for a beginner to learn it. So during the process many times I questioned, well, I'm not sure if I will ever learn this. Isn't there another braking method that might be easier to learn and might be just as effective, or at least enough for me to be able to skate outside, because I really want to skate on the street, and also recreational skating. And then sometimes you end up somewhere where the road goes down a hill, and if you just you're not able to brake enough to slow yourself down, then you get into trouble. You get really, and it's really scary as well. It's not fun to skate outside and always be thinking, what's coming around the corner? Am I able to brake in time? So, and it's just for safety. You should not go out skating on the street if you don't have a way to brake. So I think it's really important to discuss this topic. So I hope other people learn from my own process. I'm not saying this is the best way to learn it. The way I did it, that could be done maybe more efficient, more quickly, better. I don't know. I'm just sharing how I came to now being able to do the power slide, and share it to maybe be inspired if like people seeing somebody in their 40s learning to skate, and then being able to learn the power slide in sort of like 1 year. Maybe that's also inspirational to others, and that's why I'm sharing this. So I hope you will enjoy. Okay, so what is the power slide and why did I want to learn it so much? So the power slide is where you put one foot in front for sliding and the other one behind for rolling. And that means that you can put your feet quite far apart, and which gives a lot of stability. And therefore, if the road surface is kind of more grippy or more slippery than you thought, you don't fall forwards or backwards very easily because of this stability. But of course, if you use your wheels for sliding, any kind of slide, it will wear down your wheels quicker than a brake pad. So that's a downside. But at least what I need is a braking method that works at any speed. Because if I'm rolling down a hill and I'm thinking, too bad, I'm going too fast for my only braking method that I know. Yeah, too bad. That's not going to be good enough for me. So I want to have a method that works at high speed. And because of the stability of the power slide, it should be able to work quite well at high speed. The only problem is, how do you get into the slide? Because from going forwards to suddenly going backwards with one foot, it's kind of a bit tricky. So that was kind of the reason why it took so long for me to learn it. So let's see what other alternatives there are, like what other braking methods are possible instead of the power slide. So the heel brake is the most common method for braking on inline skates, but I don't have a heel brake, so I needed some help from Flowskate to show how it works. Actually, he made a very interesting video, you should check it out. He's comparing a heel brake to a parallel slide, a magic slide and a power slide. And surprisingly, he found out that the heel brake is just as effective as any of the other methods. And therefore, so yeah, it seems like heel brake would be perfect. Why would you need anything else? Well, as you can see, the heel brake works as a pad that's behind your skate, and you lift up your front skate with the brake, and then you press the brake on the ground, but it sticks out, so it's kind of in the way if you do a lot of more complex movements, or maybe some wizard skating or some crossovers, you can trip over it. It's kind of limiting your freedom. So that's why I didn't really want to use a heel brake. And also I've got frames which are rockered, which do not have the option to add a heel brake anyway. So I thought, well, I can just learn another braking method. There are so many methods, so what's the problem? It just took a little bit longer than I expected. So maybe if I would have started with a heel brake, maybe I would have given up to learn anything else as well. So maybe it's a good thing I didn't start with the heel brake. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, that's the heel brake. The next braking method is called the T-stop, or it's also called L-stop or drag stop. And yeah, it's quite simple. You just roll on one foot with your weight on there, and the other foot you can put it on the ground behind you or next to you, and drag it so you slow down. And this is quite easy to learn in the beginning, as long as you can skate on one foot, and you have to skate on one foot to use the heel brake anyway. It's the first thing I learned as a beginner skater, as I showed in the earlier video, skating on one foot, and then you can start dragging the other foot, see what happens. It's quite easy to start learning it, and then if you lose your balance, you can always switch to the other foot. I find it still quite difficult to drag for a long time, because it always keeps pulling me to one side, and there's so many variables. Like you can place your foot a little bit further away, a little bit more behind you, or change the angle, or go on your toe, or drag on your heel. So with all those possible variables, it's quite difficult to learn exactly how it responds. So it takes time to really get that perfect. But I already use it in emergency situations when I want to lose speed. And I can always switch to the other side if I lose my balance, so it's no problem. So I recommend everybody to learn this stop, even if you have a heel brake, because you never know when it might fail. You might lose your brake or whatever, I don't know. So it's good to have the T-stop as well ready there. Alright, next we have the Soul Slide. And I'm not sure where the name comes from, but it's quite a cool name, Soul Slide. It works by putting one foot in front of you, and it's kind of like the opposite to a drag stop. Instead of putting a foot behind you, you actually put it in front of you. Well, while the drag stop or the T-stop is not very good for high stopping power, actually the Soul Slide can give a lot of stopping power. And I also learned this before I learned the power slide, even though I thought it was very difficult. Turns out I didn't find it very difficult. You can start like pushing out one foot in an angle behind you, in front of you, or next to you, and then try to see when it starts sliding, and getting that slide more and more forwards. Eventually you'll get it, but I find that the most difficult challenge is not so much the technique, but actually the strength. I don't really have very strong legs. I got quite weak, skinny legs, and yeah, what you have to do is actually not just so much like the rolling foot where you have to like bend through your knee while dragging the other foot in front of you or sliding. Actually, I found the most hard, the most strength was required to keep my front leg from dropping down, to keep it in the, like sort of in the air. You don't want to put it all the weight on your front foot, because then it doesn't slide anymore. You just stop too quickly and then you flip over. So just getting that front leg in front of you and keeping it lightly on the ground, that was my biggest challenge. I think it's like soul slide is like 20% skill and 80% strength. And so I kind of used it inside when the road, then the floor surface is a bit smooth. I use it already quite a lot, but outside on the asphalt when it's very grippy, I don't find it very useful yet, because I just don't have the strength. I try to train my legs. I mean, eventually I would like to be able to do a pistol squat. I'm trying to train for that, but it takes a long time to get the strength, and also my knees have always been a little bit difficult. I have to slowly build up the strength, and then eventually I will be able to do the soul slide much easier in different situations. There's also a little bit of downside, and that is it's kind of one problem is that you put your foot kind of next to you and you push kind of sideways as well. And then if there's a surface that's kind of suddenly more slippery than you thought, then if your foot slides away, you fall immediately on your bottom. and also your feet are closer together than in a power slide. Like, because your foot is not turned around, you can't like put them really far apart. So your front to back stability is also a lot less than on the power slide. So on a surface that is suddenly more grippy or less grippy than you think, then the soul slide will not be very reliable. That's the main downside. But on a predictable surface, it's really an awesome way, and I continue learning it. So I can recommend everybody to learn it, and it also gave me a little bit idea of how it feels to slide before learning the power slide. So it's kind of a good introduction to sliding, for me at least. Okay, next up we have the Magic Slide. The names keep getting cooler and cooler. So the Magic Slide, I don't have the skill to do it yet, so I need Sean from Flowskate again to help me out there. It's kind of like a power slide and a T-stop together, because the front foot is like doing the sliding of the power slide and the back foot is doing the dragging of the T-stop. So the nice thing is you brake with both feet, and while in the power slide you only brake with your front foot, and you'll never want to put all your weight on your front foot, because then suddenly if something becomes more grippy than you think, then you flip over. So you don't want to do that for the balance. But in the Magic Slide, since the other foot is also dragging, sliding, and then you get double the stopping power, sort of. And Sean found out that it's kind of the same stopping power as his heel brake. So you can get the same result basically without the heel brake. But I think it's quite difficult to learn it. I'm not sure if it's going to be useful to use on all different kind of surfaces. And also, I don't think it's like very friendly to your knees, because that back foot pulling on your leg sideways, I'm not sure if that's really very healthy. So the other thing is that it's quite difficult to do. I don't think you can like start learning a Magic Slide before learning a power slide. And it's always good to, if that foot, the dragging foot is dragging too much, it's always good to be able to flip it backwards and go into a normal power slide. I don't think you can pull it back in again and turn it into a soul slide, because if it's dragging too much, you don't have the freedom to pull it back in. So I don't think there's any point in trying to learn the Magic Slide before learning the power slide. So yeah, that's kind of my conclusion on that. So I didn't really start with Magic Slide, and first learn the power slide. But maybe one day I'll try the Magic Slide and see if it's not as bad for my knee as I think it is. Now let's go to the power stop. So the power stop is a little bit different from the power slide, and it's like when you go into the power slide by pivoting one foot. Normally you pivot the foot all the way around 180 degrees, and then you do the sliding with the foot in front of you. But in the power slide you keep the pivoting foot also into the direction that you want to brake in, and you brake on both feet. And actually, but the way I do it, it's not really very powerful yet, so let me get some help here, because this is not really a good demonstration of a power stop. Of course, our friend Bill Stoppard, he's really the expert on this topic, and I'm still hopefully hoping that one day I might be able to do something similar. So he says it's like he can do it also on high speed. I'm not so sure if it's the best way to stop. It's quite exciting. It looks very cool, but and it's also really a strong braking method. Of course, you use two feet, and instead of the magic slide where you have one foot dragging behind, actually in the power stop you actually put both in front. It's kind of like a parallel slide, but then trying to do it as shortly as possible to just stop in the most short amount of time possible. Yeah, that's kind of something I will maybe do in the future, but for now I think also I saw Bill Stoppard when he was learning the power stop. He first learned the power slide and then slowly start learning the power stop, and eventually also if you're going really fast and you're doing power stop, eventually it will turn into a parallel slide, because you can't just immediately stop if you already have a lot of speed. So it's kind of also an entry into the parallel slide. Okay, next up is the parallel slide, as I already mentioned. Again, I need Sean to help me out here, because I really can't do this. Although I did do some ice skating when I was young, and I was pretty not pretty bad at ice skating, because I was pronating a lot. I couldn't even make crossovers, but one thing I could do was make a hockey stop, and I was really proud of that. And then I thought, when I was having difficulty learning power slide on the skates, I thought, well, I could do a hockey stop. Why can't I do that on skates? But yeah, it's really different. Unfortunately, it's not the same. The thing about ice skating is you got a blade which is flat on the bottom, and that means that if you go more up, stand more upright, the friction is lower, and if you go steep on a bigger angle, the friction becomes bigger, and that causes some kind of stability when you're sliding. It kind of, as long as your skate is not too sharp, it kind of gives a sort of a feedback mechanism where the ice actually keeps you upright and keeps you from sliding away or tipping over, and that makes it so easy for a hockey stop on ice. But on inline skates, it's totally the other way around. When you go more upright, actually the friction becomes higher, and when you turn lower because you slip away, the friction becomes even lower, and you just fall on your bottom. So it's really not the same, and I couldn't use my skills that I had, and I kind of gave up on this and turned back to the power slide. And also it's this parallel slide, you need to really have a feeling and for how rough the surface is, because you have to lean into the friction and keep a good balance. So it's not really a good method for unpredictable surfaces at all. It's not a good emergency braking method, so I totally gave up on that. But it's really fun to learn. I will want to learn it someday. So not for any useful purposes, but just for fun. But for now, that's not my focus. I really want to first learn useful slides that give me a very reliable braking method. Not the parallel slide. That's just basically not it, unfortunately. Okay, next we have the plow stop. So the plow stop is a way of stopping where you push both feet diagonally in front of you, and you keep pushing your feet out, even though the ground tries to push them together, and in that way you cause a slide, because the only way your feet can still keep going forwards is by sliding, and therefore you slide out and you lean against the friction, lean into the friction of the road, and you can balance yourself by changing your feet, the angle a little bit, and it's a really good way to quickly stop because you're sliding on both feet, like the magic slide and the power stop and the parallel slide. So it's very effective in braking, but the main issue that I find useless about this way is that of braking is that it relies on a very predictable friction. If the friction suddenly changes, especially if it becomes less, then you just slip out and you fall down. So it's because your feet are next to each other instead of in front of each other. So there's no front to back stability at all. It's just you have to, maybe you can do a little bit of change with the angle of your feet and keep your balance in that way. But for big changes in the friction, it's not a useful way, not a reliable way to brake. So for me, this is not really something I considered learning more. I didn't focus on that for that reason. But there is another way, kind of a variation, that where you don't slide, but you actually step from one foot to the other, and that also slows you down. You just keep going from left to right, and because of this force, you slow down. You can slow down quite quickly if you're good at it. I'm not so good at it, as you can see, but it's not really a strong braking method. The only positive thing is that you don't wear down your wheels like you do in sliding, because you don't slide. So it's also a little bit more reliable for unpredictable surfaces, because you're not depending on the sliding, how good you can slide on the surface. You're just rolling from left to right. So it's useful, especially at slow speeds, to slow down and keep your wheels. But for emergency brakes, that's really neither the plow stop or the stepping plow I find very useful for that. Okay, last but not least, I also want to mention another way of braking or stopping, which is maybe not really considered as a braking method, but I still want to discuss it because I think it has a really useful purpose. And it's called, by Bill Stoppard, he calls it the power step instead of the power stop. And Ivo from This Is Soul Skate Shop, he calls it the peanut butter grabbing technique, because it seems like you're kind of stepping sideways to grab something from a shelf in an aisle of the supermarket. But it's also kind of like a power stop, because you're actually sort of pivoting on one foot and then rotating your other foot around to come into a 90-degree stance. But instead of sliding, you immediately stop. You just absorb the shock with your knees. And of course it doesn't work at very high speed. You can't just absorb the shock and absorb all the energy in one shock. That would be impossible. But for medium speeds it can be quite okay, and for slow speeds it's perfect, because you don't wear down your wheels as well. So it's quite useful. But then I also found out there's a variation that I'm not sure if it's called also, I'm not sure how it's called, but I want to show that. Let me see. So there's this video from the Stuttering Skater, and he was skating together with Angelia in New York, and Angelia was skating on these long speed skates. And I was a bit worried, like, how does she brake on those skates? Can she do a power slide? And I didn't see her doing any power slide in the video. I only saw her doing some drag stops, but of course that doesn't brake very quickly. So if something unexpected would happen, I was wondering, does she know how to stop quickly? But then this happened. She threw away a bottle in a trash can, but it fell out and she wanted to put it back, so she immediately slowed down, and the way she did it was kind of like the power step, but instead of stepping in a 90-degree angle, she was going too fast for that, but she was doing one step in a certain, like, 45-degree angle, and the other one more 90-degree. So I found this very interesting, like she slowed down so much quicker than I was expecting you could do in this way. And I was really impressed by this. So I wanted to try it myself, and so I did. I tried to see how it would stop, and also I found it surprising that she didn't seem to use a lot of width, because like going one direction, going the other direction, you would expect you probably need some width, but I found out that yeah, you can do it kind of on a tight space, and it does slow down quite quickly, and I found it difficult because you have to estimate the angle of attack based on the speed. So the faster you go, the less you can turn. And then the next step, you're already slower. You have to adjust your angle so you can brake faster, brake more. But I found that it's very difficult to learn. I mean, I did it just one session, but to progressively change the angle, I found it difficult. So therefore, the first time I tried it, I couldn't really go to a full stop because I kept going diagonal instead of going further and going into the 90-degree angle, which I eventually did. So I was quite hopeful, like, oh, this is a great method to brake very quickly and not wear down your wheels. But the next day I found a problem for me, and that's that I had a huge amount of knee pain. I always had, like, if I do very heavy training on skates, I always have a little bit of pain in my left knee, but this time was worse than any other day. Well, actually, it was getting better before. I was like thinking, oh, I'm improving, getting more muscle power. But then suddenly, after this, I went back to even worse than the first time I skated. And actually, I found out a couple of weeks ago that it seemed like my knee was actually dislocated a little bit, and I was really a little bit shocked by that. So I think this way of braking is not for me, because it's like too much shock on your knees. So I don't think I'm going to continue this way, unfortunately, because it seems like a very effective way to stop without wearing down your wheels. But yeah, this is basically not for me. Maybe you want to try it, but yeah, now I'm going to skip. Thanks. So yeah, that's the last method I wanted to discuss today. Hopefully you enjoyed this overview of different braking techniques for inline skating. And my reasoning for why I concluded that I wanted to keep learning the power slide, even though I found it difficult to keep going at it. But maybe you also saw other braking techniques here that you want to try, or maybe you're missing a braking technique that I didn't mention. Please let me know in the comments below. And also, if you got questions, also things you want me to discuss or cover in following episodes in this series, let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed any of this video, please give a thumbs up so other people can maybe see it as well. And thanks a lot for watching, and hope to see you in the next episode. Bye.